A federal judge in Washington just rejected a challenge to the Trump administration's bump stock ban enacted after the Las Vegas massacre. And later this week, a bill for calling for universal background checks goes up for a vote in the House.
Momentum is clearly on the side of gun control advocates, but a recent mass shooting in Aurora, Illinois proves that even with the toughest gun laws and the best intentions, illegal guns and those who shouldn't own them still slip through the cracks. So John Avalon has an important reality check for us now. John.
That's right, guys. So this week, Congress is expected to take up the first standalone gun reform bill in almost 2 decades. H.R. 8, known as the Bipartisan Background Checks Act. Now, it would make background checks apply to gun shows and other transfers from unlicensed sellers, closing a gaping loophole. And this is about as close to a consensus as you get in American politics, folks. A Quinnipiac poll taken roughly a year ago showed that 97% support for this proposition. 99% of Democrats, 98% independents, and 97% of Republicans. But that poll was taken immediately after the Parkland school massacre. And a popular support for gun reform tends to spike after attacks. So this graph shows that the percentage of people saying guns are the most important issue tends to fade soon after. And the gun lobby knows it. They bet on it. This bill is expected to pass the House and will likely get stalled in the Republican-controlled Senate. But even broadly popular gun control isn't a cure-all. Let's take a closer look at one of the most recent mass shootings in America. As Gary Martin was being fired from the Henry Pratt Company in Aurora, Illinois, he opened fire. And when it was over, 5 of his co-workers killed and 5 police officers were injured. Now, he'd lied about a prior felony conviction for domestic violence in Mississippi 20 years before. That should have prevented him from owning a gun in the first place. Now, Illinois is one of only 3 states that requires a license just to own a gun. But Martin's Mississippi conviction didn't show up in any of the databases. It was only when Martin tried to upgrade to a concealed carry permit and submitted fingerprints for it that the Mississippi felony surfaced. By that point, he already had a gun. Now, it turns out that Illinois has a process for that very situation. The state police is tasked with revoking the permit and taking weapons away. But after they notified Martin his permit had been revoked, there's no record of any follow-up. And Martin's not alone. Illinois State Police say they revoked more than 10,000 gun owners' permits in 2018. All were required to surrender their permits and explain how they disposed of their weapons. But more than 75%, about 2/3 of those permits were not returned, as required by law. Only about 100 arrests were made since 2014 because of it. That means there are literally thousands of people in the state of Illinois that police know about who have guns and shouldn't. And check out this darkly ironic twist. The record of the Mississippi conviction eventually did show up in the national database 5 days after the shooting. In a statement to CNN, the Mississippi Marshal's County Circuit Clerk's Office, where Martin was convicted, said it passed on notice of all felony convictions to the state Supreme Court, but won't give information to a federal database unless it specifically requested. So the anatomy of the tragedy reads as follows. The national database should have contained a record of Martin's Mississippi conviction, but it didn't. Illinois should have known about it before it issued Martin the gun permit, but it didn't. And once Illinois found out about it, it should have immediately confiscated his weapon, but it didn't. It's a reminder that common sense gun reform is about a lot more than just writing laws. It's about enforcing those laws and giving law enforcement the tools and resources to do it.